Hi there, everyone. Hi there, smart drivers. Rick with Smart Drive Test talking to you today about the GDL, the graduated licensing, GDL, graduated driver's licensing, and the GLP, the graduated licensing program here in Canada. It's sometimes called that as well. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about violations when you're in the novice phase of the GDL or the GLP program. So stick around. We'll be right back with that information. Hi there, smart drivers. Welcome back. Rick with Smart Drive Test talking to you today about violations in the GDL or GLP program. And we have a few people here already. Annoying Miner is here. Katie's here from Arkansas. And Annoying Miner is from Virginia there. And John is watching from Vancouver. Hall Phase is here. Hall Phase is in Toronto. And I've had a few problems with my words here. I'm not sure what's going on. I had some surgery earlier this week, and I'm convalescing. I'm doing all right. Everything's going well. It was just a minor hernia surgery, nothing sexy. So here we are. Nathan is here. Hello, Nathan. Ryan is here, watching from Regina, and Cody's here. Everything's going well. Thank you, Cody, and everyone else is doing well. Awesome. And Nathan is from San Jose in California. Brilliant. And the weather is definitely starting to change here in the Okanagan Valley in the interior of British Columbia. It is really fall here. And Corey is here. Corey is Bricks for Wheels. He is the moderator, and Corey does an excellent job of getting up the videos that I suggest that you have a look at if you ask me a specific question, which will give you much more detail. Island Girl is here, on track truck driving school there in Arlington, Texas, and she just recently got that off the ground and is working on that. And congratulations to her on opening a truck driving school. So, no small feat for sure. Be Natural is here, hello, and excellent. And the live stream and everything seems to be working. So today what we're talking about, the GDL program, we're talking about the GLP program, and we're basically talking about one mistake in your life will change the rest of your life, because it's not going to change the rest of your life, but it is going to take a long time for the consequences of messing up in the novice stage of your GDL or your GLP program to pass, especially if it's as serious as a drink driving charge in the GDL program. Because as you know, for those of you who just recently got a license, your first license, you know that you're in the learner's phase for a period of time. Most of the time that length of time is 1 year, and then you go into the novice phase and you have your license for 2 years. You do have restrictions. You have passenger restrictions in the vehicle. You cannot have any alcohol in your system when you're driving. You have cell phone restrictions. And you cannot drive during certain times of the day. Depending on where you are in the world, these restrictions in your GDL program are going to vary a little bit. So look at your handbook where you are in the world. And what's sort of, I'm talking about this today because I had a friend of mine whose son unfortunately had she had a drink driving charge. Still in the GDL program in the novice phase, and probably that person is going to lose their license because of that charge. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about drink driving in terms of how you are charged under the criminal code here in Canada, which is one of the oddities in the world. Most places in the world you're charged under the Highway Traffic Act. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that and the impact on you if you are unfortunate enough to have that happen, okay? And I'm also going to talk about the fact that, there but for the grace of God go I, because unfortunately I am guilty of this as well, and I think a lot of people who are guilty of this, because as I said before, for those of you who are learning how to drive, you're facing the 4 Ds, right? Driving, distracted driving, dating, and drinking, and you have little to no experience with those. And particularly here in North America, we have such harsh restrictions around the culture of drinking. It's not like in Europe where people grow up drinking, right? So they have a good deal of experience with it. And when you put these heavy restrictions on, at least in my experience in Australia, and here in Canada and North America is that what happens is that you create a binge drinking culture, and it's not healthy. It's not healthy at all. And I feel like a lot of times that I'm reiterating what I'm saying all the time in terms of drinking and driving, and that you can't drink at night, drink until 2 o'clock in the morning, get up, at 6 a.m. and then go to work and think that you're fine to go to work. You're not. You're still legally drunk. And just bear with me here 1 second. I think I'm going to have to reset my web browser because the comments aren't rolling over here. So just bear with me 1 sec. I'll reset that and see if that works for us. There we go. Okay, so we're back up here. Got that going. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to the PowerPoint presentation, and then we'll come back and I will answer questions about mistakes that you may have had, violations that you may have had in the novice phase and whatnot. But basically that's what we're going to talk about here today with that. So let me get over to the PowerPoint presentation. There we go. Transition. So penalties in the novice phase of the GDL program, the Graduated Driver's License, GLP. And this is for new drivers who just got their license, passed their first road test, spent the time in the learner's phase with a supervisor, and then went on and passed the road test and are now in the novice phase of the GLP program, which is usually a 2-year period. And so that's what we're going to talk about today here. So for those of you way too far down, there we go. New to Smart Drive Test, my name is Rick August. I was a truck driver through most of the 1990s. Early 2000s I moved to Australia and drove for Greyhound while I was at university there. 1997 I became a licensed driving instructor. I teach motorcycles, cars, trucks, buses, and air brakes. And I've also authored the book Air Brakes Explained Simply, which you can find over at the Smart Drive Test website. And in 2006 I graduated from the University of Melbourne with a doctorate in legal history. And for those of you who may or may not know, that is the study of policing, courts, and prisons. And my expertise, oddly enough, is in policing as it relates to traffic. So a lot of experience in terms of teaching people how to drive and legislation and whatnot around traffic violations and teaching people how to drive safely on the roadways. So as well, if you've recently passed your road test, make sure you head over to the Smart Drive Test website and sign up for the Smart Drive Test 100K campaign. We're trying to help 100,000 people earn their license. This week I put up a new video. I'm redoing some of the older videos, and this is one of the sections of the larger Learn to Drive video. This is the very first driving lesson. If you don't have any experience driving, you didn't grow up on a farm, you didn't grow up riding lawnmower, cutting the grass, and those types of things, this is the lesson you need to spend some time on. And I would encourage driving instructors as well to do this with their students and get them very comfortable with the primary controls, the steering wheel, the throttle, and the brake. And this will make it a lot easier for them to transition onto the roadway and work in other traffic once they have mastery of the primary control. So have a look at that video. So the GLP program, the first stage of the GLP program is the learner's phase. You write a written test, and then they give you a learner's license, and you're allowed to drive a vehicle with a mentor, somebody who usually has some experience driving. They sit in the passenger seat and give you instruction. You have passenger restrictions on the vehicle. You can only have your supervisor and perhaps one other person in the vehicle who is immediate family, grandpa, grandma, mom, dad, siblings. You cannot have any alcohol in your blood. There's restrictions on cell phones, both hands-free and handheld. You can't have those. Night driving restrictions, you usually can't drive between 1 and 5 a.m. And for some places, I know in Ontario, you can't drive on 400 highways without a licensed driving instructor. So that's the learner phase. So the phase that we're going to concentrate on today is after you pass the road test, to exit out of the learner's phase and pass the road test, you're now in the novice phase. And oftentimes you have to have an N on the back of your car indicating that you're in the novice phase of driving, that you're a relatively new driver. Again, you have passenger restrictions, cell phone use, 0 blood alcohol. You're not allowed any blood alcohol. There are restrictions on night driving, and there are much harsher penalties for moving violations. Most fully licensed drivers have 15 points on their license. Novice drivers only have 7 points, so they have half the number of points on their license before they're called in by the DOT, the Ministry of Transportation in Ontario. Here in British Columbia, it's the Superintendent of Motor Vehicles, and they're going to call you in once you get up to the 5 points, and they're going to interview you as to why you should keep your license. Because as it says right on your license, if you take it out of your wallet and have a look at it, it says right on it, driving is a privilege. And that privilege means that the ministry or the authority that is responsible for assigning you your license, they can revoke your license, and they can question you as to why you should keep your license. So if you have moving violations, they're going to call you in, and they're going to interview you and ask you why you should continue to have your license. So there's 2 road tests, and that should be road, not wrote. Road. There we go. 2 road tests, 4 components of each road test. So you have a road test to exit the learner's phase, and then you have a road test to exit the novice phase and earn your full license. And that is usually after a period of 2 years from holding your license. And this is the reason we're going to talk about violations again, because if you get a moving violation, your license is suspended or prohibited, then you will have to restart that 2 years, which can be an incredible pain in the butt, because unfortunately, when you don't have a full license, you're also going to be paying more for insurance. So you're going to continue to pay higher insurance premiums. And this is going to be the common theme throughout this, is that the faster you can get out of the novice phase and get onto a full license, the sooner that you're going to be paying less in insurance premiums, and the sooner that you're going to be eligible for some of the reductions in insurance rates. And I'll tell you right now, here in ICB, in British Columbia, with the Insurance Corporation of British Columbia, insurance rates here are exorbitant. And I'm speaking as a licensed driver I've been licensed for 40 years. I'm a licensed driving instructor. I teach people how to drive, and my insurance is still incredible. So I can't even imagine what it is for some of the young people who are getting vehicles and those types of things. All right, so all the road tests, and anybody who's been here at Smart Drive Test before has heard me talk about the road tests, the 4 components: speed management, space management, observation, communication, and I'll talk more about that in the question and answer period. All right, so speeding tickets. As I mentioned already, you are only allowed half the points of a full license. So on a full license, you're going to get 15 points. On a novice license, you're going to get 7 points. And 170 and 100 kilometers an hour, as you can see here in the image on the radar gun, this driver is going to have his or her license suspended immediately. They're going to have their vehicle impounded because it's considered a what is the term that they use for it? Excessive speed. 30 kilometers an hour over the speed limit, and I believe in the States it's 20 miles an hour over the posted speed limit, is excessive speeding. And in excessive speeding, you get a monster fine, and they impound your vehicle immediately for that. So higher insurance costs, and it's going to reset your novice period. So if say you're 2 years in and you're eligible to go and take your road tests to get a full license, unfortunately now you're reset to 0, and you have to start over again in that novice phase, and you could be there for a long time, and you could be paying higher insurance rates for a very, very long time. So think strategically about whether you want to speed or not on the highway or whatnot, because it's going to cost you an incredible amount of money. So these are some of the moving violations for which you can accumulate points when you're driving. Actions contrary to a road sign, any road sign, posted speed limits, turning contrary to a no left turn sign, no U-turns, those types of things, and dangerous actions, whatnot. And dangerous actions for police officers is more or less the catch-all. Excessive noise, tinted windows. For those of you who are kind of petrol heads and like your big, fast, jacked up cars and tinted windows and those types of things, know that you can receive points for all of those. Not displaying your N, having more than the allowable number of passengers in the vehicle. And know that when you're running home in the middle of the night at 2 o'clock in the morning, police officers know that when they pull you over, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to pop the trunk, and they're going to look for your friends in the trunk. So know that police officers are very wise on to what's going on with, passenger restrictions and those types of things in the vehicle. So know that if your friends are in the trunk, the police are going to look there. All right. Drinking during the novice phase, absolutely 0 tolerance. And this is one of the things I was talking about, drinking and driving. Canada is one of the unique countries in the world, and I'm not saying that it's any less harsh in any other countries in the world, in Australia, in the United States, in Europe, and whatnot. But here in Canada, we charge drink driving under the criminal code. So people who are convicted under the criminal code in Canada are very surprised when they find out that they can't travel to other countries because they have a criminal record, because they've been convicted under the criminal code. Most other places in the United States and Europe and whatnot are usually convicted under the Highway Traffic Act for drinking and driving, but still incredibly severe penalties. And I'll talk a little bit more about British Columbia specifically here, because what British Columbia did is that they increased the fines under the Highway Traffic Act because unfortunately the criminal code wasn't working. It was very difficult to get a conviction under the criminal code of Canada in terms of drink driving. It took an incredible amount of time to prosecute people who were convicted of drink driving, and I heard a statistic from one of the police officers a few months back that there's specialized units within the police force that specifically go after drink driving. And if you are not in that specialized unit for conviction or prosecuting drink driving, the chances of getting a conviction in a court of law is very, very low. It's like less than 2%, they were telling me. All right. So the case study that I want to talk to you about is a young person who was on the novice phase. This came to my attention a couple of weeks ago. And the person was drinking the night before. She was drinking the night before she went to work. Went to bed about midnight after drinking about 10 beers, woke up at 5:30 in the morning, and then proceeded to drive to work. Crashed on the way to work when they were still legally drunk. Left the vehicle on the side of the road. Somebody else saw the crash and picked them up and took them to work. They found out that when they got to work, they only had one shoe on, so they had to go back to the vehicle to get their other shoe. And when they went back to the vehicle, the police had attended the scene of the crash. And because the police officer detected alcohol and a presence of being drunk, they did a breathalyzer on the person and found out that, yes, in fact, they were legally drunk. So I want to show you the ticket here and just kind of go over this ticket. So what happened is that here in British Columbia, we have warning, which is less than 0.5 blood alcohol, and we also have over 0.8 alcohol. Now, you have to understand, I mean, I can talk about this, we can talk about this in the question and answer period, but that 0.8 is the legal limit. If you're over 0.8, you're drunk. If you're less than 0.8, but here in British Columbia, we've come down on drinking and driving really hard. You're still going to receive a warning for being at the 0.5 or having any blood alcohol in your system. So you can see you have a 3-day warning because the sample of your blood had approached to registered warn, which means that it's near 0.5 and it's a $200 fine. So it goes all the way up to 90 days because the sample of your blood on an approved screening device registered fail and your ability to drive is affected by alcohol. So this means that you are over 0.8, the legal limit for driving, and it's a 90-day automatic 90-day suspension. If the vehicle hadn't crashed here, the vehicle would have been impounded. There's an automatic $500 fine, and here you can see at the bottom that you, if you refuse, I'll just make this a little bit bigger for you. Sorry, I know you probably can't see that. If you refuse a breathalyzer, it's an automatic, you're automatically guilty. There's no saying, oh, I didn't take a breathalyzer. So here you go. And I just want to read this down here at the bottom. Immediate effect of prohibition and right of review. You are immediately prohibited from driving for the period set out in this notice of driving prohibition. You have the right to have this driving prohibition reviewed by the Superintendent of Motor Vehicles under the Motor Vehicle Act. An oral hearing is available only if prohibition is specified above is for more than 30 days, and only if you specifically request one at the time and apply for a review, filing for applications and reviews. So you can apply for a review of this, and you're probably going to have to pay a lawyer. And in my experience of what I've talked to other people who have been prosecuted, charged by police officers, and had to show up to do a review, it was anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000 just for their defense. So they hadn't even been convicted. They hired a lawyer, the lawyer got them off, and they still had to pay the lawyer $8,000 to $12,000 for their defense, and they were found not guilty. Okay? So notice of monetary penalty under the Motor Vehicle Act. The monetary penalty, as indicated above, must be paid no later than 30 days from the date of this notice. Under Section 26 of the Motor Vehicle Act, ICBC, which is the Insurance Corporation of British Columbia, may hold a hearing, refuse to issue you a driver's license if the penalty is not paid and any license in your possession is canceled under the Motor Vehicle Act. So in other words, what that means is that if you don't pay the fine, you're not going to get your license back, essentially. So we'll go down to the next page here on the back, and I just want to have a look at this back here as well. So it gives you a definition of warn, it gives you a definition of fail, and the prohibition length. You are prohibited from driving immediately upon service of this notice for the period indicated. Your prohibition from driving is counted in full days. Partial days, including the day you were served with this notice of prohibition, are not included in count of full days. All right, so prohibition review. So this means that if you apply for a review, your defense can be you were not the driver of the vehicle. And I have had students that I've worked with, that has been the defense of the lawyer, that they did not find the driver in the vehicle. There was a crash, the driver was thrown, and the lawyer argues and on part of the defense that the person was not the driver of the vehicle. You were not advised of your rights to a second test on an approved screening device. So if you think that you're not legally drunk and the police officer doesn't have another screening device and didn't give you that right or that option to blow again, then you can launch your defense on that basis as well. You requested a second test, but the officer did not perform the test. Your second test was not performed on a different device. The prohibition was not served on the basis of the lower test. The result of the test was not reliable, and it goes on and other ways that you can do this. So down here, I just want to show you this, the driving record for graduated licensing program drivers. Drinking and driving is a serious violation of conditions of the graduated licensing program. If you are a participant in the program, you should be aware that your driving record will be reviewed by the superintendent or the DOT or the MTO, depending on who the authority is that grants you your license. And you can expect a further driver prohibition for further details concerning the driver improvement program policies and guidelines with respect to drinking and driving by the graduated program. So they give you a URL here for a website that you can go and look at. Now, the other part of all of this, drinking and driving, and I'll just make this go back smaller here again. So the consequences of drinking and driving in the novice phase. We're not talking about full licenses here. We're talking about in the novice phase. The first one is the cost associated with being convicted of drinking and driving. So what's happened here is police powers in the province of British Columbia have been increased under the Highway Traffic Act, and there is defense for this, but these penalties are automatically instated as soon as the officer issues you the ticket. So the first one is the cost of the fine. And if you're going to launch a defense, as I said, that your defense for drinking and driving, not just in the novice phase of your license, but in the fully licensed stage of your driving, can be anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000. And that's just found if you're found not guilty, right? The cost of impounding your vehicle. So when your vehicle is towed and impounded, I think the costs run somewhere between $40 and $70 a day for impound costs on your vehicle. You incur those costs as the driver of the vehicle or the owner of the vehicle. Rehabilitation course, as part of having your license reinstated, you must take a drink driving rehabilitation course. That cost is incurred by you, the driver, for depending on the severity of your drink driving charge. If you're a repeat offender, you're going to have an ignition interlock installed in your vehicle, and for those of you have to blow into it. It registers whether you have alcohol in your system or not, and it's random as to when you have to blow into this, whether it'll shut down your vehicle or whatnot, and you have to pay for the cost of having that ignition interlock installed in your vehicle. There's a cost to have your license reinstated by the authority, the DOT, the MTO, the ICBC here in British Columbia. The cost here is $250 to have your license reinstated. And know that this is the huge one right here. Increased insurance costs. Your insurance costs are going to go through the roof, and I can't underscore that enough. Your insurance costs are going to be exorbitant. I have heard just awful stories about young people who are paying up to like $2,500 a month for insurance on their vehicle. Okay, loss of employment. I knew another person who was found not guilty of drink driving. Just the charge of drink driving caused the person to lose their job. The other question you need to ask yourself is transportation. How are you going to get around? If you live out in the middle of nowhere and you have to have a vehicle, you don't have access to public transportation and whatnot, how are you going to get around? And then finally, there's the emotional cost borne on the family, because you're going to have to rely on your family, on your wife, your spouse, your kids, your parents, whatnot, to get you around, because now you don't have access to being able to drive a motor vehicle and whatnot, not to mention the emotional costs and the financial costs that are now going to be borne on you and your family. So next time you have a couple of beers and you think to yourself, oh, it's going to be all right, there's no police out and this type of thing, well, something could happen. So we can talk more about this and flesh this out more in the sort of the question answer period, but that's kind of a high overview of drink driving and a case study. So good luck on your license, and remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. All right, so just transition back over here. There we go. Okay, and get back over to the question and answers. There we go. So, smart drive test. Okay, so Drive Smart BC. My friend Tim, Google Driver Improvement Program to see how Road Safety BC will deal with violations. So there you go. There is what happens in the province of British Columbia when you need to look at taking the driver improvement program after you are charged with drink driving under the novice phase and as a fully licensed driver. So this applies to both of them. Now, the penalties are much, much more severe because, as I said, what is going to bear the biggest financial cost is going to be increased insurance premiums when you return to driving. How much is that going to cost you? What that cost is going to be absolutely exorbitant. Ryan, I remember when I was in my novice phase, I have one friend of mine talking to me, and a police pulled me over because they didn't pull over to the right to let them pass. Yes, so that's the other reason that we have restrictions on the number of passengers in the vehicle for young people when they're driving, and this is the reason for that, because you're easily distracted by conversations in the vehicle with other people. So know that that people are going to distract you. So if emergency vehicles approach, as Ryan said, you're going to have to pay attention to those and know that you need to pull over to the side of the road and whatnot. Okay? Hall phase. They are strict on this law because you're going to kill someone and cause major damage when you are drinking. Yes, and there is that possibility that when you're drinking. But unfortunately, they're now saying that distracted driving is as bad as being impaired when you're driving. And people aren't just impaired with alcohol. They're also impaired with drugs. And now that we've had marijuana made legal in most provinces and states in the U.S., this is also causing issues for police officers and whatnot. So we also have that form of impairment. Traveling photographer. I remember a teacher in high school said that the police should be doing the roadside breathalyzers test from 6 to 8 a.m. because people go to sleep at 3 a.m. and think they are sober, slept it off, but aren't. And yes, that is an excellent point that you're making there, traveling photographer. Some years ago when I was working in Ottawa as a safety officer in a truck driving company, and this is exactly your point. I had a driver come in the morning, and because we were driving into the United States, commercial truck drivers in the United States have to be drug and alcohol tested. They're put into a large pool, and the pool is tested. 25% of the pool is tested on a random basis for drugs, and 50% of the pool is tested for alcohol. And at 10 o'clock in the morning, the driver came in, got pulled on a random for both drugs and alcohol, went and blew at 10 o'clock in the morning like 1.2 blood alcohol limit, and came back and said, oh, I'd had a few beers the night before. What happened? He'd been partying the night before, went to bed, got a couple hours later, and was still legally drunk. And this is what happens to a lot of people. They think, oh, I'm going to sleep over. They go to sleep at 2 a.m. They get up at 6 a.m. Well, you're still legally drunk. So know that it takes approximately 1 hour for every 1 beer, 1 ounce of alcohol. I don't know how much wine it is, but those are basically the standard drinks. That if you have 5 drinks, it's going to take 5 or 6 hours for you to be legally not intoxicated anymore. Okay, so know that. Drive Smart. Driver improvement program is for points. Responsible driver program is for impaired driving. Okay, excellent, and that's a good point that's made there. That there are two different programs. One is for drink driving specifically, and the other one is for if you lose too many points on your license for moving violations and for other types of whatever violation you get charged with and convicted for, that you're going to have to go in and you're going to have to convince the authority, the DOT or ICBC, the Superintendent of Motor Vehicles here in British Columbia, whoever that authority is, you're going to have to convince them and take these programs in order to have your license reinstated. Okay, Hall face, you forgot the consequences of being possibly killed or injured or killing someone else because you were drinking and driving. Okay, Hall face, that is something that happens. Obviously, that's one of the things, but essentially what I'm trying to impress upon you is that that's that's a given. Okay, that you potentially increase exponentially your risk of being involved in a crash and hurting and injuring, killing yourself or someone else on the roadway and endangering public safety. But even if none of that happens, my point is that the authorities, the police and the licensing authorities and the insurance companies are going to make very sure that you are going to pay a very, very heavy penalty for this. So even if you think, oh, I'm just leaving the bar and I'm going to drive down a backcountry road and I know the police are never there, if you do get caught, and even if you get caught and you get charged by the police and there is a defense put in place, that defense is going to cost you an exorbitant amount of money. And in the interim, because I've known people who have been charged, and just by the fact that they've been charged for drink driving, they have lost their employment. They've been fired from their job because they need to have a license, because you have to understand that even if you're found not guilty for drink driving, that the prohibition, the suspension of your license is automatic. Until you are proven not guilty, you don't get your license back. So if it takes 3 or 4 months for you to be proven not guilty, you still have lost your license for 3 or 4 months. And if you have a job that you have to have a license at, you've lost that job because you can't drive for those 3 or 4 months. That all of this is in the works of you proving your innocence. So yes, your point is valid, and it does endanger public safety, car wrecks and all those types of things. But unfortunately, we have a lot of people who are drinking and driving, and this is still a problem on our roadways. And if you're caught, it's going to cost you a lot of money for a long time. Okay? Michael, I'm a huge drinker, but once I crack open a beer, there's no driving. It's not just worth it. Here in Michigan, there's a super drunk now. Yes. So, Michael, and absolutely, and I think all of us who live in North America, live in Australia, Europe and other places, we know not to drink and drive. Once we start drinking, don't drive. It just isn't worth it. Call a cab. I mean, and I cannot impress upon you enough the amount of money it costs you simply for a defense. Even if you're not found guilty, you're not convicted of a drink driving charge, the cost of your defense, $8,000 to $12,000. How many cabs can you take for that kind of money, right? Not to mention, the turbulence and the chaos that this all creates and causes within your life. It's an incredible amount of money. It's an incredible amount of emotional costs in your life. And this is the point that I'm trying to make to you. It's not just the risk, that Hall Face has pointed out, the death, injury, endangering public safety, but how much cost to you and your life. It's, one phone call, one decision can change your life for a long period of time. Okay? All right, presto. My parents finally agreed to let me drive the SUV in the parking lot, but they still won't let me drive it on the road. They say this because I won't be able to maneuver it or stop it on time. Presto, you need to work on them. You just need to, if you're driving a larger vehicle, you just need to increase your following distance, start to brake earlier and those types of things. So, maybe you can convince them to let you drive the vehicle on a less traveled road and whatnot. All right? All right, Rich, some insurance companies will actually cancel your policy for drink driving. Yes, and there's another point that Rich has made, that you may not even be able to get insurance, let alone pay exorbitant fees if you're convicted of drink driving. So know that as well, that it would be pretty tough for you uh, to get insurance. All right, Katie, what happened when you are on a ramp and there's a stop sign placed on the acceleration lane and the driver behind you rear ends you? Yes, in the United States, there are some on ramps that will have stop signs. Obviously, you're going to have to stop. And the reason for those, Katie, is because uh, the reason for the stop sign is because there isn't any acceleration lane. I've seen those types of freeways where they have the stop signs and there aren't any acceleration lanes. You have to stop. But again, you have to keep an eye on what's going on behind you, because vehicles will come up and they may not stop or may not see you, or too busy distracted by something else going on in the car, passengers and whatnot. So know that. Okay. All right. Nathan, what would be the speed limit on a road if there's no sign posted for the driver's license test? Nathan, 50 kilometers an hour in the city, 80 kilometers an hour on the highway, unless otherwise posted, is the speed limits. Okay. There we go. All right. So I was talking about drink driving when you're driving a car in the novice phase, and the impact of that on your family and whatnot, and the fact that you're going to lose your job and whatnot. And I find it interesting that I'm still talking about this. I'm still talking about novice phases. A few weeks ago, I had a student, or a smart driver, say to me that they didn't even know that they were in the GDL program. They didn't realize that that's what it was called. So I understand that there's still some ignorance on the part of people who are getting a license, that they're actually in a GDL program, and what the parameters of that GDL program are, what the restrictions are on your license and those types of things. Because when you get pulled over by police and they say, oh, you're only allowed one passenger in the vehicle, you can't plead ignorance. You can't say, oh, I didn't know. You have to know as part of getting your license, because all of this information is fair game on a license test, especially a theory test, when you go to get your learners. So you need to know this information. You need to also know the penalties for driving intoxicated. And when I say driving intoxicated, I'm not just talking about alcohol, I'm also talking about drugs. That you need to know the impact that this is going to have on your driver's license, the impact it's going to have on your ability to operate a motor vehicle safely, and your ability to judge and to uphold public safety. You're not just putting your own safety at risk, you're putting other people's safety at risk as well. So know that the next time you think about going to a party and having a few drinks or smoking a joint or those types of things. And one of the tools that I really advocate for people is MADS, Mother Against Drunk Driving, contract for life. If you don't have this in place with your parents or some other members of your families or your friends or those types of things, it's simply a piece of paper. It's a contract. You sit down, you have a conversation, and you say, listen, I'm going to sign this, and I'll agree to come and get you at any time, anywhere, and pick you up if you've been drinking and bring you home and safely, right? And parents can do this with their kids, or kids can do this with their parents. And I didn't put a link down in the description there, but as soon as I release the video, I'll go and get because I know I have a copy of that over at the Smart Drive Test website. You could just type in contract for life in the search engine there on the Smart Drive Test website and pull that up. But I do advocate that as a tool, and that way there's no reproach on the part of your parents. They just come and get you and they take you home, and they don't give you a lecture and those types of things. Because if we're calling other people to give us a ride home, they're being responsible. They're not getting in a vehicle with somebody who has been drinking. They're not compromising their safety or other people's safety by allowing other people to drink and drive. So simply don't do it. Okay? Excuse me. Jaden, I was practicing driving with my therapist. White Chrysler 300 decided to go over to the posted speed limit of 30 miles per hour. Then he turned left too fast and he crashed his vehicle. Yes, and know that Jaden, as you found out, unfortunately, that vehicles can go fast in a straight line, but going around corners and maintaining control of those vehicles and whatnot is a very different exercise. And this is one of the reasons why race car drivers practice this so much. Katie, thank you for answering my question. Was involved in a car crash on the way to take the permit. Yeah, that's really unfortunate. I'm sorry to hear about that, Katie. Carrie had some computer problems earlier, just signing in. Excellent. Welcome, Carrie. Thanks for signing in here and joining the live stream. And presto, when I get my first car, I'm going to make it so much of a mess that if a friend has to ride with me, it will take 20 minutes to even make space for them so they won't ride with me. Another way that you can do that, presto, is somebody that I worked with when I was actually working at ICBC. What they did was their son, he actually bought him a two-seater car so that he could only take one other person with him when he was driving in the vehicle, and he couldn't pile in 15 people in the vehicle and those types of things. So that's another option you could do. You just get yourself a pickup truck, and an old style pickup truck, not a new one, not a quad cab, and that way you can only take one other person with you, and you don't have to explain yourself because they just like, hey, I only got one seat. So that's one other way you can do it. Presto, there you go. Okay, I still don't quite understand. Pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Can you explain and give me an example? Yes. All right, so pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. This is one of the things that we use for students who are taking the multiple choice theory test for their learner's license. And the example that I give is at a four-way stop. There's four choices. So the first choice is which vehicle has the right of way. The vehicle on the right, the first vehicle to arrive, the vehicle in the intersection, or the largest vehicle. So oftentimes it's a process of elimination when it comes to multiple choice answers on a theory test. So obviously the biggest vehicle is not the right answer, right? Because it just doesn't apply at all. So you can eliminate that answer. So we're left with three. We're left with the vehicle on the right, the vehicle, the first to arrive, and the vehicle in the intersection. So the other two are technically right. The vehicle on the right and the first to arrive, those are right answers. But the best answer is that the vehicle in the intersection has the right of way, because if there's a vehicle in the intersection at a four-way stop, you're not going to proceed. You can't proceed because you're going to risk being involved in a crash, or probably will be involved in a crash if there's a vehicle already in the intersection. So it's pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. And that applies to life as well when we go through. Oftentimes the right answer may not be the best answer, right? Because it's kind of like that saying, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And sometimes when we get into a dispute with our better half, our significant other, a lot of times we're like, oh yeah, I'm right, and you'll kind of hammer that home, and then finally at the end of it, it's like, yeah, you're right, but your spouse is miserable, you're miserable because they're making your life miserable, and you're not getting along. So the question is, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And it comes back to that, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer, in terms of multiple choice and life and driving and those types of things. And it's the same thing when you're actually on the road and you're driving, right? You may have the right of way, according to traffic laws, but the best answer is to simply take your foot off the throttle, let that person proceed, and then you go after they, clear out of your space. Because one of the keys to remaining crash-free when you're driving is managing space around your vehicle and staying away from other fixed objects and other road users on the roadway. Because if you don't do that, you're going to increase exponentially your chances of being involved in a crash. And we want to mitigate that when we're driving. We want to be smarter, safer drivers, right? And the way that we do that is by managing space around our vehicle and staying away from other road users and other fixed objects. So know that in terms of picking the best answer. And sometimes it's just a matter of letting off the throttle, let the person go, have their crash somewhere else, and you go off and have a great day and be happy, right? Okay? Jaden, and also ask, yes, I did call the police and tell them about it. Awesome. And so the police showed up and everything was taken care of in terms of the crash. So one of the other things I just want to briefly touch on, we're getting up near the top of the hour here. We do have a culture of drink driving, and just kind of a historical overview of drinking and driving. We had a very big culture of drinking and driving in sort of the third quarter of the 20th century. And there was the saying, one for the road. And that's exactly what one for the road meant, is that you were going to have another drink before you got in your car and went home. So know that as well, that we had a huge drinking culture that was very much married with the driving culture. And unfortunately what happened was that traffic fatalities spiraled out of control and authorities were forced to do something. And what came in was that we had better safety features in vehicles. We now had seatbelt laws in vehicles as well. And we launched these social media programs, anti-drink driving programs, buckle up programs and whatnot to keep road users safer. And now we've got to a point in North America, other places in the world, where drinking is you don't drink and drive. You just don't do it. But unfortunately, people are still reluctant to take other forms of communication and transportation. People are still reluctant to call a cab. People are still reluctant to call their friends for whatever reason, because, well, you're not you can't handle your booze, so why are you calling me? Sorts of things, right? And I think that drinking and driving, unfortunately, it's still an issue. It's still a problem, and this is one of the reasons why in the province of British Columbia that they have increased police powers. And because the interesting part about it in law, that's called ultra virus, right? That it's beyond the power of the province to be able to supersede the Criminal Code of Canada, because the Criminal Code is federal. Nobody's ever challenged that. And the reason they haven't challenged that is because the Criminal Code was ineffective. It wasn't controlling drink driving within the province of British Columbia. So this is what happened, that they increased police powers, and now we can automatically do that. We can now automatically suspend people's licenses when they're pulled over on a breathalyzer on the side of the road, automatically impound their car, and automatically make our roads safer by taking away their license for 90 days, 30 days, have a warning, those types of things in place. So it's much more, it's much more effective, whereas before we were not being effective. So, Rush Girl, thank you so much for the super chat. That's awesome. Thank you for that. And Priceless, thank you for that as well. What's your opinion on the new ICBC driving factor system? Priceless, you want to get me started on that? Okay. Priceless, I'm going to tell you this right now. When I moved to British Columbia in 2006, I'd probably been a driving instructor for 30 years. But what happened was, I'd never been in the province of British Columbia before. I'd been out of the country for 5 years in Australia. I didn't have a car when I was in Australia. I came to British Columbia, and the car that I bought, I had to put it in somebody else's name for the insurance, because the insurance was so expensive. I could not afford the insurance when I came here in 2006. The insurance was like $3,000 a year. It's like 3 times what I was willing to pay. And it wasn't because I didn't have any driving experience. It was because I hadn't had insurance for 10 years in the province of British Columbia. And even this year, I went to renew my insurance in September for my vehicle. I got a 20-year-old Honda. I've been licensed in the province of British Columbia since 2006. I'm a licensed driving instructor, teaching everything: cars, trucks, buses, motorcycles, air brakes. I haven't had any crashes, and I have a clean driver's abstract. My insurance is still $1,000 a year for public liability and property damage. Basic insurance. My insurance is $1,000 a year. I can't imagine what young people are paying for insurance, and I simply don't think that it works. Okay, that's the quick overview of that. Presto, when you're making a right turn, are you supposed to hug the curb right? No, you're supposed to, Presto. Ideally, you're supposed to be on the middle of your lane, but you can go outside, inside, outside on the turn to straighten it out, and that will make it a bit easier for you. Jaden, according to my therapist, the beginning and end of December I can start my road test, but my therapist also said I have to drive 7 days a week. Yes, it's the more practice you can get, Jaden, the better you're going to be in terms of being prepared and ready for your road test. All right, Presto, I always try to drive 15 to 30 minutes a day to get experience, but the struggle is my parents sometimes don't have time to take me, and obviously I only have a learner's permit. Yes, and Presto, just keep bugging them. Just keep bugging them. Whenever they're going to the store, they're going anywhere in the vehicle, offer to drive. And that is, you know, even 15 minutes a day. And it's about consistency. It's a little bit like putting videos up on YouTube. You want to be consistent, and the more driving experience you can get, the better prepared you're going to be for your road test, and the more experience you're going to have driving in different weather conditions, on different roads, and different light conditions, and those types of things. All of that is going to prepare you for driving and being ready for your road test. Jaden, so there was a new traffic light in Florida. The funny thing is, my dad and I, the light was green for 1 second and went back to flashing red. But by the way, it's fixed now. It's working. So they put in a new traffic light, but the traffic light wasn't working properly. Yes, that sometimes happens as well. AJ, I got my CDL-B permit on Tuesday. Excellent. Congratulations, AJ. That's awesome. And B, is that bus? I believe that's bus. And AJ, do you have a job? Do you have a CDL job lined up for that license that you're going to start working at? That's really great. Awesome. Congratulations on that. Thanks for letting us know. All right. So what else we got here? Okay. Excellent. So Carrie, if you got any questions at all, let us know. And just quickly review for road tests, when you're going for road tests: speed management, space management, observation, communication. So speed management, posted speed limit or the flow of traffic, whichever is less. That's the speed that you have to drive for the purposes of a road test. As well, a couple of people will ask me in the last week or so, speed limits inside the city are 50 kilometers an hour, 30 miles an hour unless otherwise posted. Speed limit outside the city is 80 kilometers an hour or 50 miles an hour unless otherwise posted. So that's the speed that you have to drive for the purposes of your road test. Space management: don't get near anything. It's less likely you're going to hit something. All right, so following distance is going to be 2 to 3 seconds in a passenger vehicle. For those of you driving CDL vehicles, it's going to be up to 5 seconds. All right, stopping positions at intersections: before the stop line, before the crosswalk line or sidewalk, if those two conditions don't exist, at the edge where the two roads meet. All right, stopping in traffic so you can see the tires of the vehicle in front of you making clear contact with the pavement. And do not block intersections. If you drive into an intersection on a road test that you can't clear, automatic fail on a road test. So know that for the purposes of a road test. As well, if you're making a right turn on a red traffic lights and there aren't any signs that prohibit you, come to a complete stop at the correct position at the intersection before you proceed, and then give way to all other road users and then proceed on the right-hand turn. For those of you in New York City, know that you cannot make a right-hand turn on a red light in Manhattan in the 5 boroughs. Staten Island, Queens, Brooklyn, the Bronx. I got 5. Manhattan. There you go. All right, so know that in New York City. Okay, so that's space management, observation. You need to observe. You need to have a scanning pattern in place on a road test. Far down the road, both shoulders in, check the center mirror. Far down the road, in, check the instrument panel. Down the road, both shoulders, check the left wing mirror. Down, check the right wing mirror. And repeat that every 10 to 12 seconds for observation. Reversing, you need to do a 360-degree scan before you put the vehicle in motion, in a reverse motion. And when you are reversing, hand on the back of the passenger seat, look out the back window. Every vehicle length, stop, do another 360-degree scan, and then proceed. All right, and then observation, shoulder check 2 times minimum for every time you turn the vehicle, anytime that you move the vehicle sideways, so you're going to make a lane change or whatnot. 2 times on the shoulder check. Do that. If you do not shoulder check on a road test, you will not be successful. And unfortunately, I've got somebody wandering around the internet here telling you that they've adjusted their mirrors so they don't have to shoulder check. Don't listen to that person. If you don't shoulder check on a road test, you will not be successful. I don't care where you are in the world. You must shoulder check. Put that in air quotes, underline it, bold it, put it in a different color. Okay? You must shoulder check on a road test or you will not be successful. As well, to be a smarter, defensive driver and stay crash free after you get your license, do not lose that skill. Continue to shoulder check. Because if you don't, one day something's going to happen and you're going to run into another road user. Okay, so continue to shoulder check. You cannot eliminate blind spots in and around your vehicle with mirrors. Okay, you just can't. Communication, the way we communicate with other road users, lights and signals, horn, eye contact with other road users. We're not sure what they're doing. Eye contact, hand gestures, all 5 fingers. Don't tell somebody they're number 1 on a road test. And then finally, the most important one is the position of your vehicle on the roadway communicates intent. If the driver of the vehicle is in the left lane, there's a very high percentage, the high chance that that person is going to turn left as well. Merging onto freeways. I've had this conversation just won't go away. Drivers say to me, well, what if the highway's going really slow and I can't merge over and they won't let me in? Crowd the left side of your lane. There is nothing that tells other drivers on the roadway that you were going to move over, because we don't trust people. We don't trust other drivers, right? We're taught that. Don't trust other drivers. Don't pretend you know what they're going to do. As soon as another driver starts to crowd that left side, oh my God, the space opens up, especially if you got your signal on. They're going to move. They're going to give you some space, so know that as well, okay? So, speed management, space management, observation, communication, must have those 4 skills in place. Doesn't matter what vehicle you're driving, where you are in the world, how old you are, what road test you're going for. If you don't have those 4 components in place, you will not be successful on a road test. Okay, Michael, I was wondering that my examiner mentioned my turns were a little wide. I guess part of that has been a little automatic since I ride the buses a lot, knowing these buses makes wider turns. Yes, so don't follow what the buses are doing in your passenger vehicle as well, Michael. Corey will put the video up for you on learning to drive. Do the exercises in that, and that'll help you to fix that, correct that issue that you're having. Michael, I still have a bit of nervous about hitting the curb. Did that lots when I practiced. Yes, work with the pylons, Michael. 36-inch, 1-meter tall pylons, and that'll correct that issue that you're having. AJ, yes, it's a bus and straight truck, and unfortunately, no, I don't have any jobs lined up. Okay, AJ, just go out there, and Corey will put the video up for you as well about job search, your resume, your cover letter, and just start knocking on doors, as many as you can, and just tell them what you're doing. And remember that when you actually go to the place, the transportation company, the bus company, the truck company, whatnot, and you go in and you say, listen, can I talk to the manager? Can I talk to the operations manager, the person responsible for hiring? That when you give them your resume and your cover letter, specifically addressed to that company, that's your little mini interview, right? That's your 30-second, 1-minute interview that you said here, and it's showing initiative. Okay, so do that in terms of getting a license, getting a job, and those types of things. And if you need any more help with that, then drop me a note, and I'll be more than happy to help you out and get you a job, get you going here. Presto, I hope my parents can afford my insurance when the time comes. Yes, it can be a bit expensive. John Doe, my daughter passed thanks to you, and $1,800 more driving lessons insurance, but that's okay. Awesome. And that's great news, John. Thanks so much for letting us know. AJ, I'm going to see if I can get more free training soon, though. Excellent. And your daughter passed in August. Awesome. By the way, I haven't driven since I passed my road test last month. Michael, try to get back in the vehicle and get some driving experience. Just, if you can do it every couple of days, that'll just keep you on top of it there and whatnot. Presto, yes, my dad says his mirrors are adjusted so he doesn't have blind spots. I always get onto him for not shoulder checking. Yes, and that's not true. Not true. You can get those convict mirrors. Those will help a lot. You cannot completely eliminate blind spots, and I know people will say that. People will tell you that, but I disagree. Okay, Jaden, I went on eBay and there was a Crown Vic with police lights bar and push bar, even a petition, which is completely legal, correct? I don't know if you're... I'm not sure, Jaden. You'd have to check the laws there in Florida. Okay, John, thank God she isn't licensed as a 17-year-old from September to... Yes, okay. Her mom won't let her. That's funny. Michael, thank you. You're welcome. Cody, enjoyed the stream. See you next time. Cody. Thank you so much. Her mom won't let her on the highways. She has her license, but we will only let her drive local roads. Yeah, and that's probably okay for a little bit, John. But maybe just go out with her and just be with her in the vehicle when she's making left-hand turns at complex intersections and driving on interstates and highways and whatnot, and that'll definitely help her out and boost her confidence as well. Okay, It's so hard getting her to pass the insurance test. You passed her. Your lessons brought her through. Excellent. That's really great. Palit Feast, thank you for verifying about making right on red lights because I saw you doing this. And I asked my instructor. He said not in New York. But I said, Rick said yes. Palit Feast. Yes, in the state of New York, in Manhattan, in the 5 boroughs, you cannot turn right on a red light. It's the only place that I know that you can't. Nobody else has told me anywhere else. But yes, those places you can't turn right on a red light. Hey Rick, I actually been practicing my driving, actually driving to work, and it gives me a lot of practice in the mornings, which is really good. And yes, and you know, even though it's the same drive, Jaden, it's going to give you a lot of practice in terms of just driving back and forth to work. Carrie, appreciate all your knowledge and videos. You're helping me to be a better driver, so thank you. You are most welcome, Carrie. Glad we can help out. John, I follow your instructions. Yes, yeah, and if you could just, any experience you can give her, John, any time that she gets a chance to drive and you're just there in the vehicle counseling her and those types of things, it's really going to boost her confidence and help her out with her driving overall. Presto, what happens if you get pulled over with a learner's permit because you made a mistake because you were driving? You know, something, if you're, it's unlikely, Presto, that you're going to get pulled over on a learner's license because oftentimes you have a mentor in the vehicle with you. And when you have a mentor in the vehicle with you, you know, they're going to say to you, hey, you're speeding or you're going too fast or you're doing something wrong or whatnot. It's really unlikely on a learner's license that you're going to get pulled over by police because you're really working to pass the road test. You know, you're staying at the speed limit. And if you do go over the speed limit, it's probably not going to be very long. And, you know, for most of us, most of you, I've been in the learner's phase for a long time, you're going to have an L on the back of your car. As well, in my experience, it's very unlikely that a learner driver is going to have, that they're going to be aggressive, they're going to be breaking traffic laws and those types of things. I tend to find learner licensed drivers timid when they're driving. They're not confident, they're not pushing on the throttle, they're not getting it going as fast as they should be. And, you know, I can be walking down the street and I can see somebody driving a vehicle and I just know that they're a learner driver. I can look in the vehicle and go, oh yeah, they're with mom and dad and they're practicing. So there you go. Okay, so it's not likely it's going to happen. Okay, John, I will be on the highways with you. You passed her through her driver's license, and that's really excellent. We're so happy we could help out, John, and congratulations with that. And, you know, just all the best. I really wish you all the best. That's really exciting. Traveling photographer, you also can't turn right on red lights in the city of Montreal. I was there for work, and the taxi driver told us this when he asked. That used to be the case some years ago, traveling photographer. That's not the case anymore in the city of Montreal. You can now turn right on red lights in Montreal. I said that to a friend of mine because I remember years ago when I drove there in the 1990s, no, you couldn't turn right on a red, but now they've changed the law that you actually can in the city of Montreal. Ryan, from car driving to CDL, truck, bus, your tips and instructions are very helpful. Thank you, Ryan. I'm glad we can help you out. And thank you so much for signing up for the winter driving course and the defensive driving course, both available over at the Smart Drive Test website there on special. So have a look at that as well. Here we go. There we go. Transition. And we're just winding up here. We're actually a little bit over, so all the best. Yeah, you don't want to be too timid though, John. You do want to have confidence and get the vehicle going up to speed and stay with the flow of traffic and whatnot. So, all right, so we're going to wrap it up there. Congratulations to all the smart drivers who've passed in the last couple of weeks, and good luck to those of you who have a road test coming up in the next week or so. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great night. Bye now.